Hello and welcome to the Hungarian Grand Prix. I'm your host Steven Walton and this is a preview show about everything you need to know ahead of today's race. We're going to be looking at the grid, some storylines that are coming out of today's race, the strategies, the weather forecast, and of course which corners you should be keeping an eye on. As you saw yesterday in qualifying, it was Lewis Hamilton who took pole position ahead of Max Verstappen. We don't say that very often this year, but Verstappen's streak of 5 pole positions came to an end when Hamilton pipped him by 0.003 of a second. A pretty small margin, to say the least. Now, it's the first pole for Lewis Hamilton since Jeddah 2021, so it's been quite a while since he started from the front row. But anyway, first of all, let's have a look at the grid order for today's race. As I mentioned, Hamilton is on pole and Verstappen will be alongside him. On the second row, it's all McLaren, so it's Lando Norris ahead of Oscar Piastri. That car is continuing to perform extremely well since McLaren brought upgrades, firstly to Austria and then to Silverstone. They're expecting to struggle here, so to qualify third and fourth is an exceptional result for them. In fifth, we've got Guan Yu Zhou, a extremely impressive performance from him. He was the fastest Ferrari in the field yesterday, and he starts alongside Charles Leclerc in the leading Ferrari in 6th. On the next row, it's Valtteri Bottas backing up Alfa Romeo's extremely strong performances, and he starts alongside Fernando Alonso, who's probably relatively disappointed starting down in 8th. Aston were coming to Hungary thinking it was going to suit their car a lot better, and were probably expecting a stronger result. Sergio Perez, he was didn't make much of a dent in qualifying, although he got through to Q3 for the first time in 5 weekends. He really didn't trouble the front. He was 4/10 slower than Max Verstappen, his teammate, and that's left him to start P9. And in 10th, it's Nico Hülkenberg, who continues to qualify well for Haas. A very good performance to get into Q3 for him. 11th is Sainz. He's sort of the first major player who's really out of position. We would have expected the Ferrari to get into Q3, but he was knocked out. And then it's Esteban Ocon for Alpine, and followed by the man that everyone will be watching today in P13, Daniel Ricciardo, on his return to Formula One. As you're probably well aware, he's replaced Nick de Vries at AlphaTauri. P14 is Lance Stroll, very much out of position for him, though with Alonso only 8th, it's not too bad, but certainly with what Aston were expecting, P14 is a bit of a disappointment for him. Pierre Gasly in 15th, the second of the Alpines. They've really not been threatening this weekend, Alpine. They've been very unassuming, and both of them starting outside the top 10. Then comes Alex Albon. This track here in Hungary does not really suit the Williams, so that's why they've slipped back a wee bit this weekend. So 16th was probably about as best you could expect from Albon. In 17th, it's the second AlphaTauri of Yuki Tsunoda. And then in 18th, it's the big shock of the weekend, which is George Russell, who got knocked out in Q1 after getting caught up in the traffic right at the end of the session. He'll be extremely disappointed given where his teammate is starting from, pole position. And then on the last row of the grid, it's Kevin Magnussen for Haas, and Logan Sargent rounds out the field for Williams. Now, looking ahead, let's have a look at some of the storylines that we're going to see play out during this race. The first one is going to be whether Lewis Hamilton can take the fight to Max Verstappen. A big moment in that fight is going to be the start of the race. Remember, Hungary is a really difficult track to overtake on, so if Hamilton can hold the lead through the first corner and through the first lap, there's a good chance that he might be able to hold on to it for quite a while. Unlike we saw in Silverstone when Lando Norris took the lead, Verstappen was able to pass him just a few laps later because it's easy to overtake around there, whereas it's going to be a lot harder for Verstappen if he has to fight his way through today. Now, if Hamilton can go all the way, of course, keep in mind that he will break Red Bull's monopoly on wins. That's right, Red Bull have won 10 from 10 this year, and the last time someone someone else other than Red Bull won in Formula One. It was George Russell for Mercedes back in Brazil last year. One of the key things to sort of keep an eye on, though, during this race will be the drivers out of position. There are quite a few of them, so let's just mention them again. It's Sergio Perez down in 9th. That's quite low for a Red Bull, the quickest car in the field. Carlos Sainz starts from 11th, Lance Stroll from 14th, and George Russell from 18th. Those drivers are definitely contenders to take an alternate strategy to try and bank on potentially a safety car helping them out, or something just working with the alternate strategy. They'll be ones to keep an eye on. Probably the team that will be really one to keep an eye on today, though, is Alfa Romeo. With their surprise qualifying positions, they're both starting inside the top 10. It puts them in prime position to score some big points today, which would go a long way in their very tight fight that they have in the Constructors' Championships with Williams, Haas, and AlphaTauri. So just a reminder, Joe is starting 5th and Bottas back in 7th. An extremely strong qualifying from Alfa Romeo. Looking ahead to the strategy, Pirelli is predicting a 2-stop as the optimum strategy today. They expect to see drivers using predominantly the hard and the medium tyre and sort of neglecting the soft tyre due to the extreme heat in Hungary, and there's really fast track evolution as well. The optimum strategy, according to Pirelli, is to start on the medium tyres and then do 2 stints on the hard tyres. Pirelli does say a 1-stop is possible, but they also say it's very much on the limit. So it'll be fascinating to see whether one of those out-of-position cars tries the 1-stop, if anyone gives it a go. One thing to keep in mind is track evolution in Hungary is really high, which makes the undercut powerful. That could be especially a big deal for the front runners. If they're able to stick together, we could see this race being decided on strategy. Rain looks unlikely today. BBC Weather is predicting sunny weather throughout the race in Hungary with a high of 31 degrees Celsius. Now let's just talk quickly about this track. Hungary is a slow speed track, so overtaking won't be a common sight today. The main corner where it does happen is turn 1. So that's because it comes right after that end straight, so they get a big dose of DRS, and usually it gets them just a little bit alongside. It's one of these DRS zones where the drivers really have to make it happen in the braking zone rather than getting past on the straight. There is also a chance at turn 3, so once they've gone through turn 1, they get another dose of DRS, and there could be overtakes down at turn 3 as well, so that's another corner to watch out for. Well, that looks like everything to discuss ahead of the Hungarian Grand Prix. That's all I have for the preview show, so thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoy the Grand Prix.